front in public at the Invictus Games.
Yeah, some commentators have said they've acted like a celebrity power couple while posing for selfies with fans in the Dusseldorf.
Aren't you glad to see it? The Duke and Duchess of Cuddles in Germany for the Invictus Games. I mean, they are definitely putting on a show, but I think that it's more than wanting to convince people.
I think that he's got it wrong.
I like to think so.
Yeah.
I think in the middle of the night sometimes he must wake up in a cold sweat and think, my God, what have I done? Perhaps.
And that quip was only the opening shot. Behind closed palace doors, King Charles is furious. Sponsors are quietly rewriting Invictus contracts, and veterans who once called Harry brother now whisper the word betrayal.
I think that the Invictus Games has become the only credible project that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have. They've really got to nurture this event because...
Why is Meghan staying silent? What emergency plan are organizers drafting without their royal founder? And could a single joke really erase a prince's entire legacy? Keep watching, because every answer hits harder than the punchline that started it all. Prince Harry's return to the UK was meant to be a low-key, dignified moment. Just him, the Invictus Games, and a handful of handshakes.
He's still on the right path, but I think in certain moments he must regret, being estranged from his own family. He tells us he's happy and kind of...
But instead, he got something entirely different. The stage was set for what should have been a celebration of his work with wounded veterans, a cause that's become his post-royal legacy. But before he even had the chance to make an impact, he found himself at the mercy of Graham Norton, a master of the one-liner. The audience had no idea what was coming. Norton, known for making even the most polished celebrities squirm, unleashed a single jab that hit harder than anyone expected.
have failed, and on such a global scale.
And do we think that this is just another example of Meghan sort of snubbing Britain? Because obviously...
One sentence, one quip, and suddenly the once beloved royal was the target of an internet firestorm. His reaction? A tight, forced smile and a face flushed with discomfort. A moment that's been replayed across social media, sparking memes, viral edits, and endless commentary. What made this sting so much more than just a joke was that it wasn't just a slip-up or an offhand remark. It was a public reminder of how far Harry had fallen.
On his way there, she's totally avoiding it again. We never see her here. I mean, maybe a lot of people will be grateful for that, but it's certainly...
From the adored royal rebel to the punchline of late-night talk shows. In that moment, everything Harry had hoped for, his quiet re-entry into Britain, the calm behind the scenes, disappeared. The cold reality was clear. Harry wasn't the hero of this story anymore. He was the joke. Within seconds of Graham Norton's brutal jab, the internet erupted. What started as a clever roast on live television quickly became the viral moment of the year.
Yes, he probably would regret it.
Yeah, I think he does, but I just don't think he doesn't care. I think he regrets it, but he doesn't care enough to do anything about it because he just thinks, what's the point? And I don't think if he said to Meghan...
Social media was set ablaze. TikTokers turned the clip into dramatic slow-motion edits with violin music, while memes flooded Twitter, or should we say X, faster than you could say royal meltdown. One viral post featured Harry with a crown made entirely of Spotify logos, mocking his reliance on his commercial ventures rather than his royal duties.
I've heard from several other royal commentators, Tina Brown, Andrew Morton, they do believe...
Another cleverly swapped the Invictus Games logo for a crying emoji, clearly signaling the emotional toll of the moment. The joke didn't just sting in the studio, it ricocheted around the world, and in true internet fashion, it morphed into something far bigger. What was once an offhand quip now had a life of its own.
Back into the fold, I mean, she doesn't make any real efforts to kind of get back in the good graces of her family. Maybe it's not
a cultural moment that many saw as a perfect reflection of Harry's post-royal identity. The public had a field day, mocking, memeing, and ridiculing him like never before. The laughter wasn't just coming from the talk show audience anymore. It was echoing through the digital streets. The more Harry tried to ignore it, the louder it got.
He is avoiding the UK because she's not very popular there. I do think it's a matter, personally, of self-preservation. She's trying to avoid more negative press, and that's what she's going to get if.
But the real danger here wasn't the memes or the trending hashtags. It was how they symbolized something deeper. The public's perception of Harry, once filled with sympathy and admiration, had now transformed into something else entirely: apathy. The prince who once inspired loyalty and devotion was now the punchline of a joke everyone was too happy to repeat.
Or you think he'd sort of say to, well, let's try and patch this up.
I mean, that is an embarrassment. That is shocking.
They've never met, and he's never met the grandchildren.
The roar of laughter wasn't just from the crowd at the talk show or the people on their phones. It was a sign that Harry had lost the room completely. As Harry's moment of humiliation played out on live television, the royal family's response was anything but comforting. In fact, it was downright icy. There was no rebuttal from Buckingham Palace, no subtle press statement.
Or if she's not celebrated and welcomed, so she is going to go to some of those places where people are going to cheer her on and welcome her, and why not?
No sources close to the king offering quiet support for the embattled prince. Instead, the silence that followed the joke spoke volumes. In royal terms, silence is the loudest slap of all. Behind closed doors, King Charles was reportedly furious, not just about the joke itself, but about Harry's absence in the aftermath. The Invictus Games were sacred ground to him. It was one of the few projects that still embodied duty, service, and honor in his eyes. For Harry to show up, barely acknowledge the legacy, and then become the subject of a viral joke was a deep insult, not just to him, but to the entire institution. The king had held out hope, a flickering glimmer that his son might return and make amends. But this was too much. And it didn't stop there. Prince William, already hardened by years of Sussex drama, reportedly saw Harry's UK visit as just another performance in cowardice. The respect once shared between the brothers had eroded to the point where William saw no need for any reconciliation, no matter how small. The emotional toll of the years of drama, the Oprah interview, the book, and now this public spectacle had worn thin the bond between them. William, once Harry's protector, had made it clear there was no more defense left to offer. In a world where family is everything, the silence from Harry's closest allies spoke volumes. Charles's anger wasn't just about the joke. It was about the years of distance, of unresolved tensions, and of Harry's apparent refusal to show up when it mattered most. Even those who once defended him in the palace corridors were now backing away. The message was unmistakable. Harry may have returned to Britain, but his place in the family was long gone. The fallout from Harry's uncomfortable return wasn't confined to the royal family. The shockwaves were felt across the very institution he had worked so hard to build, the Invictus Games. This wasn't just about a personal embarrassment, it was about the survival of Harry's proudest achievement. The Games, once hailed as a symbol of hope and strength for wounded veterans, had been Harry's post-royal redemption arc. But now, insiders are quietly whispering that it may be on the brink of losing everything it stood for. Corporate sponsors, who had once been eager to support the event and its high-profile ambassador, are starting to grow uneasy. The enthusiasm that once flowed freely is now tinged with hesitation. Behind closed doors, meetings are happening. Contingency plans are being drawn up. Sources close to the Games have revealed that the focus is now shifting away from Harry's image, something that was once central to Invictus, towards the athletes themselves. The Games' heart and soul have always been the veterans, but it's now clear that the prince who founded the event is no longer the driving force. It's a bitter pill for many to swallow. For those who believed in Harry's vision, the uncertainty surrounding the future of Invictus is a huge blow. Some veterans, the very people who helped build this event into what it is today, have started to express their disappointment. They feel that what was once about a shared mission, about honor, sacrifice, and healing, has slowly become more about Harry's personal drama and less about the warriors the Games were meant to uplift. The man who stood with them in the trenches, who cried with them, and who gave impassioned speeches that once brought audiences to tears, now feels like a distant memory. With the 2027 Games still a few years off, there's growing speculation that Harry might not even return to oversee the event. Insiders have hinted that his involvement might be scaled back, or worse, cut entirely. The truth is, Harry's presence at Invictus is no longer seen as an asset. It's become a liability. For the veterans and the sponsors who once stood proudly behind him, the question now isn't if he will return, but whether they can trust him to show up when it matters most. As Harry's world crumbled in the UK, one person's silence spoke louder than anything else: Meghan Markle. While Harry faced the public fallout of the Graham Norton joke, Meghan was conspicuously absent from the scene. No statement of support, no social media posts calling for resilience, no cryptic Instagram story to back up her husband. Instead, the Duchess, who is usually front and center for every major moment, retreated into complete silence. Was it a simple oversight or a calculated move? Sources close to the couple insist that Meghan is supporting Harry privately, but the timing of her silence feels more like a strategic retreat. After all, Meghan has always been savvy with her image. She knows when to step into the spotlight and when to pull back. In this case, with Harry facing the brunt of the joke, she chose to keep her distance, perhaps knowing the intense media scrutiny would only worsen if she was seen beside him. For Meghan, it's about protecting the carefully crafted Hollywood brand she's built, a brand that thrives on a polished, controversy-free image. And the optics of Meghan's absence are hard to ignore. She's been to past Invictus Games, smiling for the cameras, making her speeches, posing in perfectly coordinated outfits. It was all about supporting her husband, but also, undeniably, about the narrative she could control. Her presence at those events wasn't just about the cause. It was a carefully planned move to align herself with a positive, heroic image. Now, with the games embroiled in scandal, her silence feels more like self-preservation than support. What's more telling is that insiders claim Meghan had warned Harry not to go back to the UK at all. Not for Invictus, not for anything. Perhaps she knew this would be a disaster waiting to happen. And now, as the storm brews, Meghan watches from California, her silence serving as a loud statement of its own. She doesn't need to say anything. Her absence in itself is a message. The Sussex brand, carefully curated in the light of Hollywood, is much more important than getting caught in a sinking royal ship. While Meghan's silence spoke volumes, the cracks in the Sussex brand are becoming impossible to ignore. Once a shining example of royal rebellion, the couple's carefully orchestrated post-royal life has begun to unravel at a pace no one saw coming. From Netflix deals to their Spotify podcast, they've built an empire on vulnerability, personal struggle, and reinventing royalty. But with each passing day, it feels less like a reinvention and more like a public relations disaster. The cracks that were once small, barely noticeable fissures have now turned into gaping holes. Spotify's decision to pull the plug on Meghan's Archetypes podcast after just one season was a clear signal. The streaming giant, who had invested millions in the Sussexes, subtly implied that the podcast's content just didn't resonate as hoped. The show, which was supposed to be Meghan's big return to the public stage, fizzled. It failed to spark the conversation they had hoped for, and worse, it left sponsors and partners questioning whether the Sussex brand still had the same magic it once did. The podcast was supposed to be a powerful voice for women, but instead it was seen as another costly, underwhelming project that failed to capture an audience. Next came Netflix, where the Sussexes promised a revolutionary docuseries about their post-royal lives. Instead, Harry and Meghan provided more of the same: accusations, grievances, and royal drama that had already been aired ad nauseum. For a week, the world watched, but the documentary quickly disappeared into the algorithm's abyss. It never gained the traction that was expected, and now the world is left wondering, what's next for the Sussex brand? This downward trend has left both the couple and their supporters scrambling. The spark that once made the Sussexes intriguing, Harry's military service, their humanitarian work, their battles with the monarchy, has been overshadowed by their relentless PR pushes and controversial media appearances. And it's not just the public who's tuning out. Longtime corporate sponsors, the very people who helped bankroll Invictus and other projects, are growing visibly uncomfortable. Behind closed doors, there's talk of shifting gears, of distancing the Sussexes from the very event that was supposed to define Harry's legacy. The Games, once a shining symbol of his post-royal purpose, are now being viewed through a different lens. Corporate sponsors are reportedly rethinking their commitment, and there are even rumors of planning committees drafting alternative plans to run the event without Harry. The prince, who was once the face of Invictus, is now seen as more of a liability than an asset. What was once a legacy of service, strength, and sacrifice has been reduced to another Hollywood saga. The brands built around the couple are faltering, and with them, so is their credibility. Without the same sense of purpose and with the sponsors pulling back, the Invictus Games, once Harry's crown jewel, could become yet another tarnished piece of the Sussex puzzle. While the world focused on the jokes, the memes, and the endless media coverage, a much quieter, more painful reality began to unfold behind the scenes. The veterans who once stood proudly beside Harry were starting to turn away. The Invictus Games, built by Harry to honor wounded warriors, had always been about much more than the prince himself. It was about resilience, about showing the world that even those who had faced the harshest battles could rise again. But now, for many of those same warriors, the very man who once stood with them in the trenches feels like a stranger. Harry's absence from key moments, his seemingly increasing distance from the cause, has not gone unnoticed. Many of the veterans who had once called him brother are now questioning where he's gone. They've watched as he's become more of a brand and less of a leader, more of a celebrity than a comrade. The personal connections that once defined Harry's relationship with the Games, those emotional speeches, the late-night talks, the laughs and the tears, now feel like distant memories, drowned out by a series of PR missteps and media circus moments. As one Royal Marine who competed in several Invictus Games shared, "We needed a brother, not a brand." The pain in his voice wasn't rooted in anger, it was rooted in loss. The man who once wept alongside them, who walked with them through the toughest times, had somehow become a figurehead, distant and out of touch with the very people he had set out to serve. Harry once showed up for them, not just as a prince, but as someone who understood their struggles, someone who stood shoulder to shoulder with them as they fought their battles. But now, to many of the veterans, he's just another face in a suit, another celebrity who shows up for the photo op but disappears when the real work begins. They don't need a prince who only shows up when it's convenient. They need someone who walks the walk, who's there in the trenches, not just on the red carpet. The shift in perspective from the veterans is perhaps the hardest pill for Harry to swallow. For years, they rallied around him, believing in his cause, trusting that he understood their struggles because he had been through his own. But now, as the scandals mount and his public persona continues to shift, the loyalty they once felt toward him is eroding. They don't see the man who stood beside them anymore. Instead, they see a brand in crisis, a prince who has abandoned his post in favor of Hollywood deals and media attention. For Harry, this is perhaps the most painful consequence of his actions. Not the media ridicule, not the family strife, but the realization that the very people who once believed in him, those who shared their deepest wounds with him, no longer recognize him. They don't see the soldier prince anymore. They see a celebrity who cashed in on their pain, someone who used their struggle as a stepping stone to his own brand, and now, when they need him most, he's nowhere to be found. As the dust continues to settle from Harry's latest public debacle, the question remains, can he ever regain his footing, or has he irreparably damaged his legacy? The path ahead for Prince Harry is a stark fork in the road, one that will determine whether he can reclaim his role as a leader of the Invictus Games or fade into obscurity as just another former royal with a diminishing brand. On one hand, Harry still holds the potential to make things right. He could make a heartfelt public apology, not just to his family, but to the veterans, the sponsors, and the supporters who once rallied behind him. If he were to fully re-engage with Invictus, return to the front lines of the event with the same passion he had when it was first conceived, there might be hope for redemption. The Games are about more than just him. They are about the soldiers who fought and bled for their country. If Harry could find a way to reconnect with that core mission, putting the spectacle and drama of his personal life aside, he could win back not just the respect of his peers, but the admiration of the public. The longer Harry stays silent and avoids facing the fallout, the further he drifts from the man he once was, the soldier prince who stood shoulder to shoulder with his comrades. Time is ticking. He may still have the chance to salvage his legacy, but the window is closing quickly. Meanwhile, the Invictus Games, now at a crossroads, may eventually need to replace the prince with someone who can uphold its values. Someone who doesn't just show up when the cameras are rolling, but someone who genuinely cares. This is Harry's last chance to prove he still has a purpose beyond the headlines and Netflix specials. The next few months will determine if he can rewrite his narrative, or if, like so many other celebrities before him, he'll become a cautionary tale of fame lost and legacy forgotten. One thing is clear: if he doesn't step up now, the only thing left of his post-royal legacy will be the memes, the jabs, and the silence that follows. As the world watches Harry's every move, the real question is no longer about whether he'll be able to repair his relationship with his family or the royal institution. It's about whether he can ever reclaim the essence of what he set out to do, the Invictus Games. The event that was once his greatest triumph, a symbol of courage, service, and sacrifice, now hangs in the balance, overshadowed by his increasingly fractured public image. For Harry, the stakes are higher than they've ever been. It's no longer about royal titles, Netflix deals, or podcast contracts. This is about his place in history. The Invictus Games are his legacy, created from a genuine desire to help wounded veterans find strength in the face of adversity. But now, as the Games continue to face uncertainty, so does the memory of the man who once stood at the helm. If he doesn't act soon, Harry could go from being a pioneer for veterans' causes to being just another faded royal story. The clock is ticking. The question is, will Harry rise to the occasion and rebuild what he's lost, or will he fade away, just another name in a long list of royal tragedies? The choice, as always, is his, but time is running out. As we look back on Prince Harry's journey from beloved royal to controversial figure, it's impossible not to feel a sense of loss. The man who once embodied rebellion with purpose, who stood shoulder to shoulder with wounded veterans in the Invictus Games, now finds himself lost in the noise of scandal, memes, and viral mockery. What was supposed to be his redemption arc, the very event that could secure his legacy, has instead become a stage for public humiliation, with each misstep leaving a deeper scar. The ball is in his court, but the question remains: will Harry rise to the challenge, or is the era of the soldier prince truly over? Time will tell, but for now, the Invictus Games, the veterans, and Harry's own legacy hang in the balance.